All right, we're here with Matt Queasley from Reserve Advisors, one of our valued partners here with Associate Gulf Coast, certainly dealing with reserve studies. So Matt, if I could ask you, please kind of introduce yourself, tell us about you, and more importantly, not to belittle you here, Matt, but tell us about Reserve Advisors.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me. My name is Matt Queasley. I'm a professional engineer and a reserve specialist, and been doing reserve studies, working exclusively with community associations for almost 20 years now. Been with Reserve Advisors the whole time. We specialize in assisting boards and managers and homeowners understanding their capital needs for repairs and replacements and the financial obligations that come with that to make sure that they're doing the right thing as fiduciaries and really keeping the community in a harmonious state. We serve 2,500 clients throughout the state of Florida, and look forward and appreciate serving many of the associate clients as well.
Yeah, and I absolutely would echo that. We have nothing but good things to say, not only about yourself, but about Reserve Advisors. But naturally, reserve studies in general can be very confusing. Our board members and our managers always need a little bit more information. So if you could, we can get right into the program here. Talk to me about why the reserves manager side. How are you going to help them, for lack of a better phrase?
Right. Well, a reserve study and reserves in general are part of your plan, part of your financial plan, and part of your overall strategic plan. From a manager's perspective, it's your capital schedule. Reserve studies can get very complicated and very detailed. At the end of the day, they're all trying to accomplish the same thing, and that's identify the future needs and how much it's going to cost and when you're going to need that money. And so really identifying the schedule and the right items on the list is going to help managers manage their property and fulfill their jobs to keep it, like I said, a harmonious community. So the reserve study is going to list your useful lives, your replacement costs, and all the different components that you're going to have to repair or replace over the next several years. And what that really does is helps to minimize any deferrals in projects, helps to minimize the shortcomings in the funds, an optimized cost of ownership. We see generally when items are replaced on schedule and on time, when they're at the end of their useful life, they cost a lot less to replace than if they were let go for too long. So if you're just trying to fix something or maintain an element like a roof for many, many years, you'll spend a lot of money in leaks that you wouldn't have to leak repairs that you wouldn't necessarily have to take care of if you had replaced the roof at the end of its useful life. And unfortunately, too many of our managers have to deal with which emergency or which fire to put out first instead of just taking care and putting items on a schedule and having the money to replace them. We think that just results in a better, lower cost of ownership to each owner, and of course makes the manager's job a little bit easier. Also, when a property is maintained well and a property has a reserves, we tend to get fewer complaints on condition issues or repair issues, like we said. So the other big piece of a reserve schedule for managers, especially here in the state of Florida, is that it's a highly regulated environment. Your reserves are. There's quite a few different laws, both homeowners associations and condo associations, that we need to comply with. And so having a reserve schedule and consulting with a professional to do that keeps you out of hot water.
Matt, you bring up a good point. When it comes to, sorry about interrupting there, but when it comes to the law, does the Florida statute, regardless of if it's 718 or 720, what does the statute say in the context of, does an association, are they required by law to conduct a reserve study?
Good question, and the answer is no. There's no statutory requirement to conduct a professional independent study, like the ones we conduct. It is a best practice, and many associations, primarily condo associations, but also many homeowners associations, are required to have a reserve schedule. So it puts the onus on the board to identify, well, are we going to rely on professional information, or are we going to do it ourselves? And that's where most managers, everyone in our industry sees the benefit of having a professional give you guidance on that, even though it is not a state requirement.
Understood. And from that perspective of the manager, to your point, the board might think, well, the manager can do this. The manager can give us the idea of the the extended life of this roof or whatever the component that we're talking about is. And the best practice is real simple. That's not a manager function. That is a third-party professional like yourself, where the engineers, you know more about pavement and roofs and pool mechanicals than the manager ever could. So it is fair to say that this should not be done, in general terms, it should not be done by your manager. Is that a fair statement?
That's right. I mean, managers are really jacks of all trades and experts of none, as we know, unfortunately. And there's just so many details with respect to the cost in the marketplace and the different components that it really is beyond the scope of a typical manager's expertise. There are managers out there that are engineers and maybe have construction backgrounds that can provide more information here, but generally speaking, yeah, you wouldn't want to put this responsibility on your manager, just like you wouldn't ask them to draft your governing documents. It is something where they certainly have a general knowledge of it, but to take the full picture and do a full comprehensive analysis is typically beyond the wheelhouse of most property managers, community managers.
So obviously the next slide is showing, but what, from a board's viewpoint, where's the value there for the board?
Yeah, the board has a big responsibility called the fiduciary responsibility. I call that the F word sometimes. Sorry for the beep there, but that is the responsibility to basically treat other people's monies as that, and to not put personal interests in front of their own individual interests, and look what's best for the communities. So many communities and even board members in the communities, we hear say, well, we're not going to reserve for something because we're not going to be here when that item's going to be replaced, so we're not going to experience the use of it. And it just couldn't be further from the truth. That they may be there, first of all, but second of all, their responsibility is not where they're personally going to be, it's where the community is going to be. Everyone in the community is enjoying the common elements every day that we're out there, and they're using the useful life of the roof and the paint, even though they may not be recognizing that they're physically doing anything the whole time that they're living there. Those items are deteriorating, and so it's the board's job to say what will happen when this item comes up for repair or replacement, and how are we going to take care of that. We don't want to leave a future board in a position where they just don't have the funds available. We don't want to leave future homeowners in a situation where they have to pay special assessments, and it really can erode trust in the leadership in a community if we don't have good plan in place and good funds available for these items. More and more communities and buyers within communities are stressing the financial health of that community, and a board, by having a good reserve and a really good reserve study to express to buyers, potential buyers, and the current owners that are looking to sell their units, can really do their board do their community a favor by showing the financial plan and the good financial health that they've set up to make sure that there isn't a special assessment or some unknown project looming that is going to result in a big expense for that potential buyer right after they close on their new unit. So the board has that responsibility and role, and of course they have the responsibility to comply with the same laws that do require a reserve schedule to be disclosed to the owners with each annual budget.
Now, do you find that an association wants to do a reserve study, they agree to use reserve advisors, and you deliver that product, and if I understand properly, it usually takes, call it 60, 90, 120 days from signed agreements to delivered product. Do you find, or let me rephrase the question, is the board beholden to that reserve study? Meaning, do they have to follow that like the gospel, if you will, in terms of how they manage the projects and move forward with the progression of their own association?
Well, the reserve budget is kind of like any budget in that it's a guideline and a tool. It's not the gospel by any means. With kind of one exception, I guess, when you do put the reserve budget together and you approve the budget with the reserve schedule in there, you must make the deposits according to what the budget shows. But as far as taking the reserve study and adopting that into the budget, there's certainly room for discussion. There's many components out there that have some discretion as to their mode or timing of replacement. For example, a clubhouse renovation, maybe needed in whole, or you could look at breaking that into many different parts. And there's many ways to go about this, but what I recommend to anybody is, get the reserve study. That's going to give you your best objective, independent opinion on things, but then talk to the reserve study provider about other options you might have if you want to remove that full clubhouse renovation and break it into smaller pieces, for example, or perhaps you want to put a little bit more money into monuments or signs in the near term because you have a desire to increase the curb appeal of the community. All those things can be tailored in your reserve study to reflect what actually goes into your budget. The important thing is just use good business judgment. We do have occasionally run into a rogue board or board member or committee that says, well, we don't think we'll ever have to replace that roof because we've got an extra long warranty on it, so let's take that off of the schedule. That's an extreme example. Maybe something more like a seawall or a retaining wall or plumbing could come off of the schedule. I wouldn't make those types of decisions unless you have really a good expert advice encouraging you to do that. And in most cases, your reserve study provider can guide you on why you could perhaps look at removing something from the schedule, but also oftentimes why you wouldn't want to, and how that could land your board in hot water.
So you bring up a really good point. Now we're going to tilt a little bit and talk about from the homeowner's perspective, and that is you use the two dreaded words, the special assessment. And we believe here at Associate Gulf Coast that special assessments, if you take the emergency scenarios out of the equation, but special assessments are effectively a failure to plan on the board's behalf, or from the board, I should say. Now, it doesn't matter 20 years ago that the board didn't do anything. Heck, it doesn't even matter that 5 years ago the board didn't do anything, which is what we typically hear when we're talking to our clients. Well, the previous board didn't do this, or 10 years ago they didn't do that. The reality of it is we're dealing with today. And from that perspective, if they failed to plan, then obviously special assessments pop up. So what's the true value from the homeowner's perspective as to why the board should basically require a reserve study done every so often? How does a homeowner going to look at that?
Well, they need to look at it in regards to their biggest investment. I live in a condo association. I think you do too, Paul, right? Where this is a big investment that we've ever made. One of the biggest investments I've ever made with my condo, and I think a lot of people fall into that. Their home is one of the biggest investments where they have a lot of equity in it, or otherwise. So the value of that investment is really in a large part in the board's hands to maintain and protect. And having that reserve schedule and having a good plan in place should give peace of mind to those owners that those big investments, that large amount of equity that they have is being protected by a group, a board and a management team that's looking out for the longer term, that's looking out for protection in whatever economic environment we get into. There will always be people that need to purchase homes, and there are always going to be people that look at well-run communities as a very attractive place to live, and especially ones that are maintained in excellent condition with good financial health. So in addition to that peace of mind, we do think that reserving and having a good plan in place for those is actually probably the least expensive way to fund repairs or replacements, because the other alternatives, like you said, are special assessments. You could perhaps get a loan for a project, or you do nothing, and all three of those options cost more than if you were to set aside a little bit of a monthly amount, earn a little bit of interest on that, and then have the money there for when that roof or painting or paving project is needed. So it's really reduces the maintenance cost, but at the same and again, when it comes time to sell that unit, return the maximum return on their investment.
Well, Matt, we've given a lot of information, not only to the managers, but certainly to the board members who are going to be listening to this. And I can't thank you enough for the time and your dedication, not only to your craft, but to our associations that we manage here with Associate Gulf Coast. But for the manager or for the board member who's not actually watching the screen, what's the best way, the most convenient way for them to reach out to you directly if they have questions or if they need to engage in a current reserve study?
Sure. Yeah, I always appreciate phone calls and emails. My phone number is 800-980-98 And my email is simply my first name, Matt, M-A-T-T, at reserveadvisors.com. And we also have a lot of great information on our website and the opportunity to request some information and proposals on our website at reserveadvisors.com as well.
Outstanding. Well, again, Matt, really do appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and to spread the proverbial knowledge about reserve studies. I know they can be very confusing. I think you've shown a lot of clarity on this for our managers and certainly our board members. Again, truly appreciate your time and much continued success.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate the opportunity and nice talking with you.